There is a detail in this case that investigators still have not explained. When Nolan Wells' family finally got his phone back, his Snapchat account had no saved photos or videos left on it. Not one. Nobody has said why. And that's not even the biggest unanswered question in this case. Not by far. Stay with this one, because by the end, you'll understand why his own mother says she still can't get a straight answer. Investigators looking into a case like this don't just study what happened before someone disappeared. They study what happened after. Sometimes those first few hours reveal more about what people believed and what they were hiding than anything that came before. In Nolan Wells' case, those hours have remained under intense public scrutiny. According to public statements from Nolan's family, his cell phone was not immediately returned to them after he was reported missing. Instead, they say they used a location-sharing app just to find out where the phone even was. Eventually, they recovered it. That's when they noticed the Snapchat accounts were empty. Christine Wells, Nolan's mother, has publicly questioned whether information may have been removed while her son was still missing. Here's what we have to be careful about. At this stage, there has been no public confirmation from investigators that anyone intentionally deleted evidence. No one has been charged with any crime related to Nolan's phone. And it's worth remembering that Snapchat is designed to automatically delete many messages and images after they're viewed, or after a set period of time. So was anything meaningful erased? And if so, by whom? That may only be answered through forensic analysis. The family says a joint examination of Nolan's phone has been arranged, so experts representing both sides can review the device together. If recoverable data still exists, it could finally answer what Nolan was doing and who he was talking to in his final hours. Those results have not been made public, not yet. But the phone isn't the only timeline that doesn't add up. According to the family statements, the boat carrying Nolan's friends returned to the mainland during the early evening. Nolan's mother says she wasn't contacted until later that night, after one of his friends finally called to say he was missing. Why did that gap exist? The family has publicly asked that same question. And to be clear, investigators have not announced that the delay was criminal, and they have not alleged anyone intentionally waited to report Nolan missing. Without access to every interview, the reason for that gap remains unclear. By the time the Coast Guard was notified, officials determined the circumstances didn't yet meet the threshold for an immediate overnight search. A larger search effort launched the next day. Nolan's father didn't wait for it. He took his own boat out and searched the waters around Horn Island himself. Like most parents in that position, he wanted to be the one who brought his son home. The search stretched on for nearly 2 days, across land and water. Then, on the morning of July 6th, searchers found what everyone had been dreading: Nolan's body in the water near Horn Island. It devastated his family, his teammates, an entire community that had spent days praying for a different outcome. In the weeks after, this became one of the most closely watched investigations in Mississippi. Public interest exploded. Theories multiplied online. But investigators held the line. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office kept leading the case, with the FBI confirming it was providing assistance and federal resources. And despite everything circulating online, law enforcement has kept repeating the same 3 facts. No one has been arrested. No one has been publicly named as a suspect. The investigation is still active. Nolan's family made it clear early on that they weren't going to wait quietly for those answers. They brought in attorney Ben Crump, known for representing families in some of the country's most high-profile civil rights cases. Crump said the family wanted every piece of evidence on the table, not assumptions, not rumors. That pressure is what led to an independent autopsy. And what that autopsy found is where this case gets more complicated, not less. Here's the part almost nobody is talking about correctly. Dr. Roger Mitchell conducted that independent examination, and his report did not give the family the clarity they were hoping for. Instead, it documented exactly what he could examine, what he couldn't, and why several critical questions remain open. First, the report identified an unexplained area of deep red discoloration beneath the soft tissue on the back of Nolan's head. Because of the body's condition, Dr. Mitchell could not determine whether that finding came from an injury around the time of death or from a process related to decomposition. He said it needed further investigation. That's it. That's as far as the evidence currently allows anyone to go. Second, and this is the detail that's driving most of the online speculation, key structures in Nolan's neck, including the hyoid bone, the trachea, and portions of the larynx, were not available for Dr. Mitchell's independent exam. They had already been retained by the state medical examiner during the original autopsy. Because of that, he could not evaluate those structures himself and could not rule neck trauma in or out. Let's be precise about what that means, because this is where a lot of coverage gets it wrong. That is not a finding that neck trauma occurred. It is a statement that the independent examiner did not have the materials needed to make that call either way. Right now, the official cause of death is undetermined. The official manner of death is undetermined. Both are pending further testing. And there are 2 more results still sitting out there. The state's toxicology report has not been publicly released. Depending on what it shows, it could change the entire shape of this investigation. And the phone examination we mentioned earlier, still pending too. Meanwhile, the FBI continues assisting the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, which remains the lead agency. Officials say the investigation is active, and that they're still reviewing evidence and interviewing witnesses. As of this update, no arrests, no named suspects, no charges filed. Nolan's family has asked the public to stop spreading rumors and instead focus on verified information that could actually help investigators. A reward has been announced for information leading to an arrest and conviction if criminal wrongdoing is ever established. But the moment that stayed with people most wasn't a legal update or a medical finding. It was something Nolan's mother said after burying her son. Christine Wells said that despite her grief, she still thinks about everyone who was affected by this, including the young people who were with Nolan that day. She said she hopes they're taking care of their mental health while the investigation continues. Think about that for a second. A mother who just buried her 18-year-old son, worrying about the well-being of the kids who were with him when he died. For her, this was never about attention, or headlines, or winning an argument online. It's always been one question: what happened to my son? Here's everything that's still unanswered, right now, in this case. Investigators still don't know exactly what happened between Nolan's last confirmed sighting and the moment his friends left Horn Island. They haven't publicly identified whose voice is in the viral cell phone video. The toxicology results haven't been released. And nobody has explained that unexplained finding from the independent autopsy. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old, a college freshman, a football player, a son, a teammate, someone whose future was just getting started. Today, his death is still under investigation. And until someone can explain exactly what happened on Horn Island that July afternoon, one question is going to keep echoing through every update in this case. What happened to Nolan Wells? If you have credible information related to this investigation, contact the Jackson County Sheriff's Office or the appropriate investigative authorities. Even something that feels minor could end up being the piece that matters. If this case has stuck with you the way it's stuck with so many people watching right now, follow this channel. The moment there's an arrest, a toxicology result, or any real development, we'll be the ones bringing it to you first. Until then, this case stays open, and so does the search for answers.
Preliminary findings, and this is significant. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, the occipital region. He said the etiology is unknown at this time. He said the body was received after the initial autopsy. He said the body had marked decompensation. He said coronal incision of the scalp, brain removal, Y-shaped incision of the anterior torso, and he talked about the organs being removed as is common, accompanied in the body cavity. And that when you have an autopsy, the organs are removed from the body and they are dissected and examined, and then they are put back in a bag within inside the body. So when they're buried, their remains will all be with them. But in this occasion, if there's going to be a second autopsy, then the organs are put in the body cavity so the second pathologist could be able to examine the organs as well. Very significant for Dr. Mitchell was that the anterior inner neck structures were absent, not received with the body. And we'll explain that in just a minute. And then it talks about the additional procedures performed during the second autopsy. And we'll go into the paragraphs on that there because he explains it better in his narrative. So where's the first page of the discussion? Not the diagram yet. You can keep the diagram over there. Move this back, Lisa. So he talks in the preliminary discussion opinion. This forensic pathologist identified several limitations during the second autopsy that create barriers to establishing a definitive cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells. And that's important. He talks about the fact that we didn't get to see the body when it was first recovered, like the medical examiner working for Mississippi would have seen it. He talked about the second autopsy performed on Nolan Wells revealed marked decompensation or changes. Marked decompensation can obscure the presence and absence of bruising on the skin surface, especially during a second autopsy examination. What he's saying, because the body was so decomposed that you couldn't tell if there was bruises or abrasions on the body when he received it on the 10th of July. For these reasons, additional dissection procedures not performed during the first autopsy examination were performed to rule out potential blunt force injuries responsible for the death. These procedures included facial dissection, posterior head and neck dissection, dissection of the ribs, the pelvic, dissection of the subcutaneous and deep soft tissue, dissection of the back, the buttocks, the arms and legs. He did all of this to rule out things. He ruled out there were no fractures or deep tissue injuries identified. This was very important because he wanted to be very thorough and very transparent, because transparency is the key to getting to the answers of why Nolan Wells is not with us. So he did that there and was very straightforward, very open, very open. He says, however, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8 inch focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissues overlaying the occipital bone. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open into the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and he saw the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head? And so he was important to note that in his report. He said that etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlaying skin nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both the extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that the finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not performed. He said another limitation, move this back here. Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the anterior internal neck structures. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not received with the body when he got Nolan Wells' body in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. He said, it is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief medical examiner for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said that if they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat, they too will hold them back. He doesn't know why they held the throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received it in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said, nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have the medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review the throat. That's why he said his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation. Remember, it's about transparency. Because the initial autopsy rightfully removed and dissected each organ, there are additional limitations inherent in the second autopsy of Nolan Wells. The most significant of the limitations was the inability to directly observe the airway and the lungs for water and directly observe the stomach for gastric contents. He said it is very significant as to what the initial forensic scientists who got to review the body when it was recovered. We have heard from our call center people saying the body wasn't waterlogged. Well, we need to know those things. But unfortunately, because the body was decomposed and the organs have already been dissected, those are things we can only get from the initial autopsy. So therefore, again, the manner and cause of death is undetermined until further investigation. We are hopeful that the Mississippi Medical Examiner would give Dr. Mitchell an opportunity to see their photographs and their observations to the condition of Nolan Wells' body closer in time to July 4th. That is very important, and we have to continue to demand transparency, President Johnson. In addition, the original toxicology results have not been received at the time of this report, and we continue to wait for the toxicology to come back, because again, that will be part of the investigation into Nolan Wells' autopsy by Dr. Mitchell. It is significant to note that it's many things that go into toxicology that only Dr. Mitchell would be able to opine upon, and medical experts can opine upon. And he feels the proper place to do that is before a grand jury in a courtroom. And so we would hope that the district attorney would present Dr. Mitchell before the grand jury as well. We want all relevant information to be heard by the grand jury. Lastly, in cases where a death has occurred in or around a body of water, can you move this back? This is important. Lastly, in cases where a death has occurred in or around a body of water with suspicion of drowning, it is important to confirm how that person entered the water. This is the crux of the matter. This information is especially important for those deaths of persons who can swim. As in the case with Nolan Wells, at the time of this report, this forensic pathologist does not know the condition of Nolan